here as well, just to double check it. Good morning, beautiful Facebook family. We are live now in the Vision Builders community, and I am with Angela Legh this morning. I am so excited for this interview in the Blossoming Women's series. However, before I introduce Angela, I just want to give this little reminder to make time, make space, and settle your energy into where we are in this beautiful little pocket of the World Wide Web. Turn off your phone if you are, unless you're on your phone, obviously, but turn off distractions. Maybe close the door. Hopefully you've got a cup of tea, and just allow yourself to be present in this space as we listen to Angela's story, an amazing story in the work that she's doing in the world now, but also her journey and all the experiences that shaped her into the woman she is today. So, Angela Legh, welcome, and thank you so much for being with us today.
It is such a pleasure to be speaking with you today, and I just really hope that what I bring forth is really helpful for the audience.
I know it's going to be, and this is it. I know it's going to be, and this is a topic that is very close to my heart, but we'll get there in a minute.
Okay.
So, Angela is an author, journalist, and speaker. So what we're going to do is travel back in time and remember and think about, who was Angela at sort of that 8 to 10 years old. Can you remember yourself at that age and the sort of child that you were?
Yes, I was. It's interesting because I wanted attention. I remember being like 6 or 7 years old and waking up, and I'd mess up my hair and then go into the kitchen. And my mom would say something like, "Oh, you were such a sleepyhead." So I know that I wanted attention, but at the same time, on a more serious side, I had an alcoholic father who was abusive. And so I spent a lot of time hiding, where I just didn't want to be seen. And so that's a dichotomy there.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you think about who you were as a young adult, launching yourself out of school days into this idea of adulting, who were you then, and what did you imagine you were going to do in the world?
Hmm. I was a clueless 18-year-old. And I, I was called a bleeding heart liberal. And I just, had a heart for people. And I didn't know what I was going to do. I remember I applied to San Francisco State University. I got a scholarship. I got grants from the state of California. But when I was doing the math of how am I going to afford doing all these things, living in San Francisco and doing all these things, I couldn't make it work out.
Yeah.
So I instead started being a loan processor. And that is a career. Many people spend their lifetime in the loan industry. And so I started the career of being a loan processor at the age of 1920, and then got married at the age of 21.
Wow, that's young.
Yeah.
That's young.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah, it's my now husband, who's my second husband, was married very young and had children very young as well. It's an interesting journey. So I'm curious if we just, because of your work with children, I feel like there's more here. When you left school, did you have a sense that you had a strength in something? Music, creativity, writing.
Mm,
Was that fostered?
no,
Leave school feeling like there was just like this void of, I don't know what I.
I remember at the age of 7 or 8, I wanted to write a book.
Yeah,
And so that's like the first seed of what I would eventually do.
yeah,
But when I was 18 or so, I just there was a part of me that wanted to travel the world, but I couldn't. My mother divorced my father, thank God, when I was 10 years old.
yeah,
And so, with a single mother raising 4 kids, there was no way I was going to be able to afford any European trip or even college.
yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of what shaped the short future.
Yeah. It is something that I feel more and more and more with this changing world that the education system needs a massive overhaul. The amount of people that leave school feeling like they're not good enough to do anything is quite extraordinary.
Yeah,
So let's jump forward a little bit. 21, married. When did you have your first child?
24.
Right. Yeah. Okay. And then you had the event of losing absolutely everything. I believe it was 2017, and you were a massive wildfire.
Yeah.
Mm,
So, the kids were all grown by then.
right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, so that's a very much fast forward. I
Okay.
was still married to the same man.
Yeah.
Um, I would say miserably married,
Yeah.
which is not to say that there weren't happy times. Um, the happy times were with friends or with the kids,
Yeah.
and I gained happiness from, interacting with them. But with my husband, it was, yeah, difficult.
Okay. Um, I'm curious if there feels like there was a thread between your father and your
Oh, yes.
husband. Isn't it,
Very much so.
isn't it interesting? Yeah, and
It's, yeah,
I'm grateful to you for the conversation because I think it's something that we get to look at because we so often hear stories, thousands and millions of stories of people who marry a parent that there was dysfunction or
exactly. Trying to recreate, relive that in a space of love instead of in a space of difficulty.
yeah, well, it's our comfort zone, even when it's terribly uncomfortable. It's
Yes,
the known.
it's what we know. And even to some extent, it's what we believe
Mm.
that we deserve.
Mm. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So is there more that you feel is relevant to your story in that period between getting married and your first child and the fire and losing everything?
Yeah. There there were many times in the marriage when I thought I I should just leave this marriage. And I'm a huge empath.
Mm.
And so what I ended up doing was always thinking I can't hurt him in that way. And I think that that is something that heart-based women have a hard time with. They don't want to hurt the person that is basically they're miserable staying with. And so that kept me in that marriage for 32 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. you know, we were talking before we went live about the gene keys, and I've brought it up a few times within in this, and some people know about it and some people don't, but it's just an interesting tool that we can use to reflect on who we are and why we make the changes that make the choices that we make, but also the threads that you know, this understanding that life is happening for us, to us. So there's a reason for everything. There's a reason why we make the choices we make. And I think that
Yes.
part of this profile is the people that stay, nurture, and are here to um, uh, nourish and heal.
Hmm.
We tend to be the people that don't leave. We get left. And that's not from a victim standpoint. That's not from a woe is me. It is just a purpose. It is part of why we're here. And I always think about our relationships as for a reason, for a season, and for life. Some relationships are for life,
Right.
some are for a reason, and some are for a season. And that season can be, as with your husband, for 32 years. Um, yeah, it is just, I feel the more that we can talk about these chapters in our lives and look at what we learn from them and about
Hmm.
the more powerful we become.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And one of the gene keys in my profile is the shadow of victimization.
Isn't that interesting?
Yes, it's so I went from being a victim of my father to being a victim of my former husband.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until after the fire and after I left that marriage that I realized that if I'm the victim, they have all the power. And it is only when I take responsibility, then I have power to change. And it's not me taking responsibility for what they're doing or saying or the circumstances. It's me taking responsibility for how I react to those circumstances.
It is a life-changing understanding, and one that I didn't get until I was in my 40s. I didn't.
Well,
And
I didn't get it till I was 54. So
wow.
don't beat yourself up now. It took me
No,
longer.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it is just through these sort of conversations that the possibility opens up. And it is an easy thing. And I don't say that with any kind of, um, it might feel quite triggering to say it's an easy thing to become a victim or to be a victim, but it becomes a fabulous excuse for all sorts of things. And
Yeah, and you're so right.
mm,
And it's the fear of stepping into your full power is a huge energy that keeps many people in that victim
yeah.
because then they don't have to step into their power.
Mm.
And it's like, it's even hard to say that, right? It's,
It is, and it is just that desire to wrap everybody in absolute love and
mm,
um but at the you know we are so programmed through every book that we read and every movie we watch and you know like and from our you know with our children it's like you know where that idea of being the victim of a teacher that said something nasty or the victim of a bully or the victim of a parent or the victim and then it just compounds and the mean
yeah.
girls and you know, like all the things that we get fed
Um,
just perpetuates this way of being that our life is out of our control. Our life is dependent.
the locus of control is always outside.
Yeah,
And that is one of the biggest lies that we're all told.
And the minute we can grab hold of that one thread, everything changes. Everything.
It changes dramatically. One of the things that I frequently say is that we don't see the world as it is. We
Mhm.
see it as we are.
Mhm.
And that is from the Talmud. Some people quote Anis Nin, and no, it's actually even more older than that. It's the Talmud. What it means is that when our parents, teachers, whatever the responsible adults in our life, when we were children, they would tell us how the world is,
Yeah,
but it was only the world according to them.
yeah,
And as a child, we take that.
yeah.
We're not in a space to question their authority. So we just accept, oh, this is how the world is. That becomes a filter
Mhm.
through which we now view life. And when we are able to just, I call it kind of reparent ourselves so that we can put ourselves in that situation where that adult is saying something to that child that feeds a fallacy to the child. And the adult, us, can step into that in our imagination, pick up the child of us, and tell ourselves the truth.
Yeah.
And how I best describe that is me being a 3-year-old and my father screaming at me. And maybe he's telling me that I'm not worth dirt. I don't remember exactly whatever he said to me, but there were a lot of put downs. So um, I can picture the adult me looking and saying, oh, well, look, he's drunk and he's projecting his pain onto that little baby girl.
Yep.
And so I can pick up the little girl and I can say, baby girl, you are perfect just the way you are.
Mhm.
And he's the one in pain. He's shoving that energy on you. It doesn't belong to you. It's not yours. It's his. Send it back to him.
Mhm.
And in that, it just really unravels a lot of that stuck energy that we have from those situations where someone criticized us when we were a child and we didn't really deserve it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So you had a pivotal moment among
Mm.
if the 54 responsibilities tied in with the wildfire. Is that
Yeah. So, I would back it up a little bit, 2 or 3 years before that fire. And I was so miserable in that marriage that I remember one day I was driving over a bridge and I just looked to the side and I thought, if I just turn this wheel, I can be out of pain.
yeah.
But then I had the second thought of, well, if I don't do it right, I'll
Mhm.
be in a load of pain.
Oh,
So I didn't do it.
yeah.
And then the third thought was I couldn't do that to my son, but um I just want the audience to understand how despairing I was. And when the wildfire happened, so the Tubbs wildfire happened in the wine country of Sonoma County in California. Um, it was October 9th, 2017. And I got awakened that night by a phone call saying, evacuate immediately, wildfire heading your way. And down the hill at the base of the block, the houses were already on fire. So there were trees around it. The fire was at the top of the hill. It was basically surrounding us. So we got in the car and we drove away. And the next 5 weeks were really hell on earth because I lived with my former husband, with his mother, who she raised him and made him what he was. So now it was this energetic that I was dealing with was doubled, and I just couldn't do it anymore. So I said, we have to move and we have to find a place of our own. I did not plan on leaving, but as I went through life trying to rebuild and bring some semblance of normalcy back into my life, I was asking some really deep questions like, is this the life I'm meant to live? Or even better, is this the life I want to live for the rest of my life? Because if things can change in an instant, and you can go from home owner to homeless in 10 minutes, then shouldn't you be living the life you want?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, so it took me 6 months to build up the courage to leave. And one day I just said, I'm not doing this anymore, and left. And that started probably a year-long period of alternatively him begging me to come back, or him telling me I was going against God and evil. So, yeah. Clearly he was hurt. So,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Feeling out of control, couldn't control anymore. And that's, yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
So,
And
yeah.
that was the start of my healing journey, because that was the first time I ever put myself or my needs first. So I say that that was my first act of self-love.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
A defining moment. A defining.
Yeah. And it really was the start of probably a 3-year journey
Mm.
of me trying to figure out who I was, because I had given up so much of myself
Mm.
in order to keep the peace in the marriage, that by the time I left, I was like, I don't even know what I want. I don't know who I am. I don't know anything.
It's a really, really hard place to be, but it's also, when we can look at it in hindsight or look at it with the support of another person, it's like this fabulous blank canvas.
Yes,
So,
I can create what I,
yeah,
yeah.
there's nothing to do. What do I want?
So what do I want to create out of this blank canvas? Yeah.
I give women the line, if you fell out of the sky butt naked, there's no past that defines you, there's no pre-presumed future. Who would you be? What would you do? What would you have? And it's just like this feeling of like, hmm, but
It's
there's no
all
opinion.
kinds of possibilities, right?
Exactly. Exactly. And this is the perspective thing, isn't it, Angela? It's like, well, you can be in that place and sink into a really dark hole of like there's no hope, or it's like blank canvas. Hmm,
And
possible.
it's so interesting because um, in my women's book club, 10 of us out of 12 lost our homes in that fire.
Oh, wow. Yeah, okay.
And to see the different reactions of people, there were the ones who wanted to recreate the exact house they had on the exact land they had and go back to what they had. But you never can.
Yeah,
It's never going to be the same.
yeah.
And there were others who said, oh, well, when the insurance comes in, I I can go anywhere.
Mm.
Yeah.
Mm.
So is it, there my husband's best friend is Donnie Epstein. He's a very powerful wizard. And he talks about what is internals. They build from the past into the future. And then externals, I am very much an external. I reach to the future
Yeah.
and bring it this way. So um I think of that way of looking at, oh, I want to go back to what I had before is a very internal way of looking at things. Whereas for me, it was like, oh, well, now we could go anywhere. Where might we go? And then it became, where might I go?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what what was the leap, from that blank canvas? What was
Mm. So I was using Mind Valley online. It's a course thing, course platform. And I was taking a couple of courses, and up popped a notification about the Awesomeness Fest. And I thought, well, that sounds fun.
so I missed what you said. And what was the notification of
The Awesomeness Fest, Mind Valley A Fest.
the Awesomeness Fest? Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I applied, and I think I checked off their middle-aged divorced woman category, and they let me in. And so um, I think it was 2 months after I left the marriage, I got on a plane to Bali and did a week in Bali and met some amazing people. And um, yeah, it was just like another pivotal moment that brought me into personal development in a way that I had never been before.
So when did the writing start? When did
Mm,
how did the birth of this beautiful, is it the Bella Santini Chronicles, that is your
yeah.
book series? Where did that come into being?
It actually started before the fire.
Oh,
So I had, my friend had a 9-year-old daughter, and I was just penning a little story to amuse her. And I had no intention of selling books. I had no idea of, what I was weaving into the story. Um, it just started that way. And then I lost that version of the book in the fire. So it had been on my computer, which got melted. And so I, after the, after I left, I like said, I'm going to start that again.
Mhm.
And once I started writing, it never stopped. So I have 3 published and 2 more in the hopper. So
Yeah. So tell us about the intention behind the Bella Santini Chronicles, the books. You talk about they're for the children, but they're for the parents as well, for the mums as well.
yeah. So none of this was known to me as I was writing it. It kind of unveiled as things went along. I remember when I was done writing the second book, I realized that the wraiths that appear in the second book were the perfect allegory for energy vampires.
Mm.
And so I was like, oh yeah, I used to live through that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was that understanding that, oh my gosh, that's what that's all about. Then I realized that what was happening was that the lessons I had learned in my life were being put into the story.
What a powerful medium to use to
Yeah.
pass on wisdom, learned wisdom. Amazing.
It's I say a child will never go into a bookstore and say, "Hey, can I have a book on being an empath?" They're just it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But they might ask for a fairy tale.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yes. So the Bella Santini stories sort of give children a picture of different personality types and like I'd love a little bit more of an insight.
Yeah, there's um main characters and then there's ancillary characters and they each have their own flavor. Um what the Bella Santini Chronicles really do is teach kids
Mm,
to
okay.
express themselves, to express their emotions. And what has become very clear to me in this journey I've taken is that the breadth of repressed emotion, I could say to someone, oh, repressed emotions are very damaging and it's better to express your feelings. And they're like, oh, okay, well, I probably don't do that, so I'm okay.
Yeah.
But repressed emotions can be drinking alcohol because you're stressed. It could be gambling. It could be shopping. It could be exercising to excess because you don't want to feel what you're feeling. It could be self-harming. It could be suicide. It could be um, being cold, just like I am not even going to feel that, just suppressing it. And there are so many aspects of how we all learned to deal with emotions from our parents
Mm,
because they didn't know how to deal with emotions.
yeah. Yeah.
And so it's one of the books that really fed my understanding of it is The Body Never Lies by Dr. Alice Miller.
Mhm.
And a psychologist did a lot of work on studying traumatized children
Mhm.
and the long-term effects of repressing emotions.
Mm,
Because when you are a child and you are being harmed at the hand of a trusted person, you don't have the ability to express yourself.
mm. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Process. Process.
yeah, it's just you can't say, hey, that's not right. You shouldn't do that to me. It's so what happens is you repress. And one of the side effects of sexual assault of a child is that their subconscious represses everything about it and they'd have no memory that that happened.
Mm,
And so it's only through being able to speak your truth and express your feelings about what happened that you can heal.
yeah. Yeah, it's in other words, it teaches emotional intelligence, which
Yes.
a mammoth gap. And the thing, yes, there's more talk coming out about it, even Oprah's book, um, What Happened to You, or anyway, it's like there are people talking about this emotional intelligence. And I mean my go-to is Brene Brown and
Oh, she's brilliant. Yeah.
her fabulous book Atlas of the Heart. And like when she went into that book, she asked, I'll get the numbers wrong, but thousands of people how many emotions they could describe. And it was something like four: happy, sad,
Ah.
angry, something, and there's in her book, she talks about there's, like 87 or something. And it's like we can see more and more and more why this emotional intelligence is so critical to our function in the world. But I believe that the rise of understanding about emotional intelligence, I mean, we've got AI that's taking over intellectual intelligence. It has forever been the most prized thing. We go to school and we get, like
Right.
the thing
They
that,
measure IQ, right? It's something that's prized.
yeah, yeah. And now we've got AI, which terrifies me. But it is taking over. This is the thing that's taking over. And the coveted thing, the thing that's going to be the most prized, is emotional intelligence. And this is the thing that we are seeing, very sadly, seeing is missing more and more and more from the way that children are raised, because they're raised on screens.
Right.
So,
Yeah, AI has a place.
yeah.
And even in the classroom.
Mm,
So because with the algorithms, they can have a tutoring program that allows the child to learn at their own pace and allows and gives the child specific tailored instruction based on where the child is. So there is much benefit to those aspects of AI. And screen time for kids. Oh my gosh. I have talked about this. I have written articles about it. We need, as parents, we need to model responsible behavior with screens in order for them to learn responsible behavior with screens.
yeah. Yeah, it's a vicious cycle. The busier that parents get, and the way that society is structured now, both parents working and they're like all these things, and then parents are exhausted, and so then it's hand the child the phone while you try and make dinner, so they're entertained and you can get this job. Like it's just this perpetuating problem that seems to be escalating in the way that we do things. I struggle with the idea that artificial intelligence is going to be the answer, because when we take the humanity out, the programming comes in. And so I hear what you're saying, and it's been one of my great struggles with children being stuffed in a box, and because you're this age, this is where you should be, and
Right.
that's wrong. But then who's programming the artificial intelligence that's educating our children, and the programming that's going in, that link?
It really has to do with how conscious the people are that are doing it. So I do use AI in my work, and I feel like it's my job as a conscious person to teach AI consciousness. And so
Yeah.
when I write an article, I actually drop it in AI and I say, is there any way you can improve this?
Mm,
And so it'll spit something out, and half the time I'll say no, but every once in a while there's a really good sentence in there that I'll say, yeah, I'll use that one.
yeah.
So I see it as my kind of duty as someone who is awake and conscious to help AI learn the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Sure. So your beautiful book series now, there's the follow-up is a TV series that you were mentioning, that's just kind of coming to being. Tell us what that is.
Yeah, so we launched our premiere today of a television show called Children's Lives Matter.
Mm.
And it's available on Thriving Women Networks. You can find them on E360 TV, and E360 streams through Roku and Apple TV and Spotify and all kinds of different services.
Amazing. And it launched today, literally.
And it launched today. Yeah.
So
I brought together a group of children's advocates, just beautiful, beautiful souls who are so intent on helping children thrive. And so there's 5 different co-hosts, and each one brings their own wisdom to the show. And it's just like it's a collective of us that are creating
yeah,
a beautiful space for parents to perhaps undo some of the programming that they got.
yeah, yeah.
Excuse me.
Oh, bless you. So
Thank you.
when you think about what supports children to thrive, what are the main pillars, if you can just kind of give them that?
You know, for me, it's really all about how do you model emotional coping for your children? Because every time you do, whatever you learned from your parents, you're teaching your child that that's the way you cope with that emotion.
Mm.
So understanding that there are negative coping behaviors, there are no negative emotions, they're just energy. But there's negative coping behaviors or strategies. And then there are positive.
Mm.
So when you choose a coping strategy, ask, does this harm me or others?
Mm.
So lashing out is always you're choosing to harm someone else.
Yeah.
Self-harming, you're choosing to harm yourself. Even gambling can be something that you're actually harming yourself or others. Compulsive shopping, you're harming yourself or others. So ask yourself, is this behavior benefiting myself or others? So some of the positive expression of emotions could be journaling, writing it down, making a story out of it, creating art, any kind of self-expression
Yeah.
is an excellent way to manage some of the emotions. Rage is an emotion that's very difficult, and most people will lash out. But you can pile up a bunch of pillows and you can punch them until you run out of energy.
Mm.
And that expresses that rage in a very brilliant way.
Mm.
You know, it's all in how you choose to express your emotions.
Yeah. So, for those that are interested in reading these books, I think you mentioned that they're written for 8 to 10-year-olds, but they're great for the mums as well, or for parents as well. Um,
Yeah. So they are written for 8 to 14. And my ideal is that the parents read the book to their child, kind of like Harry Potter, where, I know I read Harry Potter to my son for 12 years or so. So the reason is that most parents, they didn't learn about emotions.
Yep.
Most parents only have the coping mechanisms that their parents used as the example. And so they're, I don't want to say clueless, but it's like if you never learned about emotions, then how are you going to teach your child to thrive?
Mm. Well, we're all a product of our environment. So we've got
Yeah.
this every person on the planet has got this sort of limitation of what they've been exposed to is what they know. And it's just through conversations that we crack the door open to another whole world of possibility. It's that idea that, oh, well, maybe, gosh, if I can only list 5 emotions and yet there's all these others, maybe that's, like there's something here for me to explore. So it's never,
Yeah. And for me, it's really about not necessarily being able to name them, but being able to experience them.
mm,
So, what does anger feel like in your body?
mm,
What does joy feel like in your body? What does sadness feel like in your body?
yeah,
You know, for me, sadness is a falling away of my stomach, and it feels dropping. Whereas anger is like this white hot rod that just shoots up. Um, Joy is bubbles. It's bubbly and it comes out. And so if you can be in touch with your own emotions such that you could describe them,
mm,
then you have emotional freedom because it is only in being able to express them that you can heal.
yeah,
And if you can't express them, you're probably going to try not to feel them. And then you're in that prison of trying to escape those feelings.
yeah. Recognizing the feelings is, it's like, rather than it being a confusing, I don't know what this is, being able to go, okay, so this is what I'm feeling, this is the emotion that's coming up, and then we've got something to work with. um
Yeah. And the last step is give yourself permission to say, it's okay for me to feel this.
yeah, yeah,
Because boom, when you do that, yeah, the emotion it flows and the energy can dissipate.
yeah. It is a lovely, there's a freedom in understanding that all our emotions are energy, and this idea that things don't have to be good and bad and right and wrong. It's just like this
Right.
energy doesn't feel good, and so what do I need to do? And it can be as simple as going for a walk in nature that allows the energy to dissipate, or
That
how.
is, yes, that's a positive expression of emotion.
Yeah,
It's not necessarily an escape. It's I'm choosing to do this to work through my feelings.
beautiful.
Yeah.
So for those that want to find your books, find your work, what is the best place for them to head? And
They are readily available on Amazon in 9 different countries. I'm pretty sure Australia is one of them. So,
already, I'm sure it is. Yeah, fantastic. And you've got a website, obviously all the social medias there. It's easy to find you for people
it
to.
is. Yeah. Angela Legh, author. There I am.
Thank you so much for being with us. Thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, Edwina, thank
Um,
you.
yeah, I'm excited to share this interview, and of course, it will be available for people to dive into at any time. So, thank you so much for being with us. We will be back this evening with another interview in the Blossoming Women's series. All right, that's it from us this morning. So much love and
Mm.